I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Grace.
And you're listening to our dad and your host of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sean Moore, and today we're having one of my favorite types of conversations, which is talking to other short-term rental investors, diving into this game, willing to share their journey, because I always say there's a lot of lessons to be learned in everybody's journey, all the challenges, the ups and downs along the way. And so today we've got Mr. David Delmar. David, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into this conversation, talk about your journey. As always, I kind of just like to always start with a background, right? A backstory. It's always fun to hear somebody like, what do you do for a living? What does the family situation look like? What got you interested in investing in real estate and particularly short-term rentals? So let's start, kind of back it up a little bit, and then we'll talk about the journey.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm a lawyer. I graduated law school in 2014, and I've been practicing real estate law pretty much since then. So obviously it makes a lot of sense that this is what I'm doing for investing as sort of the side hustle, as they say. I'm married. I've got a 2-year-old son and another one on the way, actually a daughter on the way in August.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you very much. We're very excited. And I guess I always talk too much, so I'm trying really hard to be brief here in terms of my background, but you asked me some further questions if that's not sufficient. I think that's probably enough.
No, I love diving into the details of the background. And, where's home? Where are you from? Where do you guys call home?
I'm from Oregon originally, but I moved to Texas in 2019. And I guess that's a kind of a good little story there. I moved in 2019. Texas is a great real estate state, as you know. There's a lot of opportunities there to expand my career. And my wife and I were just kind of ready personally for a change too. So we moved out here, and I had to take the bar exam again in Texas. And so right after I moved and took the bar, the president got on the screen. I remember this sitting in the hotel room after I took the test. And he started talking about this virus that I know we're all familiar with. And I kind of knew immediately this is going to be a problem. I hadn't even started working for the firm that I moved here to work for yet. So I kind of knew I was on the chopping block, and I ended up getting laid off. And that actually kind of launched my whole passion and interest in real estate investing as a side hustle, because for the longest time before that, I've been like many people thinking investing is risky. I'm terrified of, putting myself out there and the exposure that there is. But I realized that day that there's a lot of risk in not doing those things too. Just sticking with your W-2 job, assuming everything's going to go okay, that's risky also. And so that's kind of what got me interested and gave me the courage, I should say, to get started actually doing some investing myself. And that was in 2020. So it still took me until about 2023 before I took the first real step. But definitely that was the start of when that really started gestating in my mind as something that I wanted to do. So.
It's interesting, there's always, and that's why I always like a backstory and like to hear kind of somebody's path and what got them interested in it. And typically it is some sort of an event in our life that we just look in the mirror and say, hey, listen, I might really love what I do. I might really, enjoy what's going on. But it's nice to have some different things, in the background working, right? And real estate investing is typically something that most people have thought about, right? But most people don't take the jump until they have something like that might happen and say, hey, look, it would have been nice to have a little bit of rental income when I got laid off. Or, maybe I should look into this. As a real estate attorney, I'm sure you work with people that you're looking at their, situations and saying, hey, man, I can see some of the successes here. I can, you probably have intimate details of some of the successes that happen. And also understand how to mitigate some of the risk and understand there is some risk into it. And so let's talk a little bit about that as well, as, because you see your job is to mitigate and help people mitigate risk at times and really make sure the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. And so you might have that a little bit different mindset of somebody, like when we say real estate's risky, you see both sides of it, right? You're going to see the upside and you're going to see the downside from just the intimate knowledge you have of what you do for a living.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Risk hedging and risk mitigation is extremely important. My background gives me that kind of superpower, I guess, to bring to the table when I'm doing this myself. But it's just, I've always respected, my dad was like this growing up, an entrepreneur and just kind of a consummate entrepreneur, never, could never be quenched in that, in those endeavors. And I've always admired people like that, because it does take a lot of fortitude and a lot of courage to put yourself out there, to take the risk, to not just do the 9 to 5, that follow the same path that everybody follows. But the rewards come with that.
Right.
And so, yes, for me, in my own case, it took kind of a violent shove from the universe to push me into that, to get me off the bench and get me into the game. But it's really been awesome since then. And I'm really grateful for that. So.
Awesome. And I think that, like you mentioned, like there's people that will like jump all the way in and like they don't have anything on the back end. There's no active income. I would say the majority of people are like us, right? We work a regular job, and like my job now is real estate investing, but most of the people in our Vodyssey community are like you. It's like, hey, listen, we've got our main job, we've got our active income, and we want to leverage that and then ultimately build some passive income on the back end. But it's a long-term strategy, right? And it's not necessarily a lot of times to just hurry and replace that and quit our jobs and jump into the game full time, because at the end of the day, that's a difficult thing to do, right? And most people that's not what their goal necessarily is. It's to say, hey, listen, I'm going to try to hedge my bets a little bit. I want to build something, but also let's talk about like when like your young family, just moved to a new area, just getting started in basically a new career in a new area, right? And trying to figure this out. And then you're saying, I also want to have this like back end side hustle, build some different, have a portfolio and diversify where some of that income comes in. But again, it's not replacing the active income, but there's a lot of sacrifices that go into that as well. One of the things that I love to talk about, in fact, I don't know, I was listening to Cody Sanchez talk about this. She says, you really shouldn't set goals. You should set sacrifices, because when you make decisions like this, and maybe let's talk a little bit about that. You said, you started thinking about it in 2020, and by 2023, we started taking the leap. But there's some decisions that you and your wife are making at that time to say, okay, what are we going to sacrifice? What are we going to stop doing so that we can have the money to go invest in real estate?
No question about it. It absolutely does require sacrifice. Some people are more fortunate than others in terms of how much active income they have to put into certain endeavors, and others are less fortunate. But for every single person that wants to do investing, you do have to live a little bit more of a thrifty lifestyle. You can't just be spending like a drunken sailor all the time. And so, that does require sacrifice, especially when you're trying to build a family. Like my wife and I knew that was happening in 2023 when we actually started. Our son was already born. So, talk about sacrifice, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of time. And it can be a strain in some cases on your home life too. If you're busy with a W-2 active day job, and then you're trying to do this at night, that can be very difficult too. So that's a sacrifice. There's definitely a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, I love talking about that, because I think sometimes the assumption is from somebody that's out there, whether they're super busy, in a high paying W-2, they're like, man, I don't have the time to do this. I don't know where I'm gonna gain the time. Like you said, I always say you're gonna have to have some time, some money, and some knowledge, right? And you want to leverage as much as you can of your own and other people's, but you're going to have to sacrifice and make some, decide, is this a priority? Because a lot of times, everybody can look in the mirror, the sky's never going to open up and give us any more time, right? And a lot of times the sacrifice does come from the time. And because a lot of times we assume that, well, they're just in a better situation than I am. Maybe they have more money. Oh, they can just do it and I can't. And that's not the case. When we have these conversations, what I always like to try to uncover from the backstory, and I love when the conversation kind of leads down this path is, you had to give up things that other people weren't giving up at your stage in the game and in life. I know when I was your age and I started making pretty good money, I was spending every dime I was making, and I lost everything twice because of it. Because I didn't give up. I didn't make those sacrifices of saving and putting in and doing the things that I needed to do. And so it's always really good to have those conversations. So, like you said, you're spending your nights, your weekends, you and your wife, and figuring that out. You hadn't invested in real estate yet, right? And so let's talk about the path of choosing an asset class, right? You're fortunate enough to be probably fairly versed on a number of different asset classes, at least from the side of working with different clients and hearing different stories in your firm and just basically what you're doing. And so what led you down the path of short-term rentals particularly?
It's actually kind of cool because there's some synergy there with our relationship. And that's one of the things that I really love the most about what we've done. My wife and I, the strength of our bond is really rooted in the fact that we are both very romantic people. And we came together, and our greatest experiences and the experiences that built our relationship the most solidly and the most deep were our romantic getaways together. And the asset class that allows us to create that experience for other people so that we can kind of almost reminisce and relive the experiences that brought us together, but also help other people have those same experiences, was vacation rentals, no question about it. I mean, that was really never even a question. And then, of course, the added benefits of vacation rentals, the enormous revenue that you can generate, the amount and extent to which you can put yourself apart and set yourself apart from other people in the same space. Like with a long-term rental, you might have a house that's in a subdivision right next to a bunch of other identical houses, and you're going to get a certain rent for that. And there's really not a whole lot you can do. But with a short-term rental, you can set yourself apart, and you could be at the top of the market in whatever market that you're in. And that was fun because that was also a way that we could collaborate. And rather than thinking about it like profiteering landlords, we could think about it as, hey, how can we help other people build a beautiful experience like the ones that brought us together? And in so doing, make our property really desirable and make more money as a result. So it's really kind of neat that you get to do that with this asset class. And so definitely that was another part of it. And I guess the only other factor I would say that kind of fed into that a little bit was when we first moved to Texas, the first vacation we went on was to this market where we brought our first property, which was Broken Bow. And we loved Broken Bow, Oklahoma. We had such a fun time there. And we thought it would be great, to have a little piece of that market where we could go and enjoy it as a family, not just as an investor, but have experiences with our kids and go up there and relax and, get our minds off things together. So that's the other thing that's great about this asset class. I don't have a renter in there constantly for a year. I have a renter that's in 2 or 3 days at a time. And if I want to go up there with my wife and with our kids, we can do that anytime we want to. So that flexibility enhances our life, not just financially, but also experientially, which is maybe more important.
Yeah, I love it. And that's why I love that, like what you just, you did a great job of just articulating why I love short-term rentals. Like I love real estate in general. I always tell people every asset class has pros and cons. Every asset class has the ability to help you become financially free, right? One thing I love about short-term rentals is just like you said, like there's a lifestyle upgrade instantly because we can use these properties, right? The things that you value in your relationship are those experiences that you and your wife are sharing, and now sharing with your son right now, the daughter that's on the way, and it's really fun. And it's fun when you were explaining that, I was picturing your property and the property that you guys have, and there is this romance about it, right? And just this, and it has the elements with the lifestyle photos with your young son in them. And it's still this romantic property of being able to go in and just enjoy this great experience. And that's what I love about them as well. It's so fun to share that with other people, but it's also the biggest levers that we could pull to make more money, right? And it's to me, it just is one of those asset classes that, you can kind of control your own your income potential, at least, to a degree, right? There's always a cap in every market of what people are willing to pay, but you can really pull a lot of levers to put a lot more money in your pocket and have a heck of a lot of fun doing it.
No question. And no question. There's just no other asset class that allows you to mix poetry with real estate. Those are two things that are normally just totally distinct and separate, but they come together in such an awesome way with vacation rentals. So yeah,
love it. So is that ultimately, I always talk about when somebody's like, hey, what market should we invest in? My first thing is to say, hey, what are the top 3 markets you would love to own a vacation home in? And then let's start there. Is that how you guys started? And so take me through the journey of selecting the market. We talked about it being Broken Bow. It's in there, the first area that you guys visited when you made it to Texas, and which is just north of Texas there in Oklahoma. But it is a popular market outside of especially the Dallas metro area, right? And in an area that you guys enjoyed. But take us through that process of buying it, setting it up, how you chose the property, and what that looked like. Because I know there's challenges in there.
Sure. The process definitely began with you and with Vodyssey, because the experience is seared in my mind. The memory is seared in my mind of sitting in my office back in, January 2023, December 2022, watching lectures. And you said exactly that. Go and target an area where you would like to own a home. And that was kind of a light bulb. We're like, yeah, absolutely. Broken Bow. Let's do it. We love it up there. Let's target that market. So that was how that started. And, we did the underwriting, and that was the other thing that Vodyssey was incredibly helpful with for me was I'm a data guy. I'm not going to get comfortable with making any kind of investment or taking any kind of risk unless I feel like it's underwritten properly and it's a safe bet. And we did the underwriting, figured out kind of what it would, what the property could reasonably be expected to generate as revenue on a yearly basis. And then kind of started looking at stuff that might be in, a reasonable price range to allow us to cash flow and make it a profitable thing. And, honestly, what we found was that the properties were expensive there. And this was still, the market was still really high at that time. And we found the perfect property. That was for our first one. And it was beautiful. My wife actually found it. I saw it and I thought, this has that it factor. People are going to see the picture of that and they're going to see, I can see myself there. It's got views, it's got those intangibles that, not everything is going to have. So that gives us a leg up on other people and something we can leverage to make it top of market and better than, the competitors. So we really wanted that place, but it was expensive. And the underwriting that we did showed that it was kind of a stretch maybe. I mean, I didn't think it would lose money, but it was definitely close. And so I wasn't sure about it. And then we talked to a property manager there. We did the Vodyssey process of interviewing other professionals and making sure we had a good team. And after talking to several property managers, all of them said that the underwriting that we had done was a little conservative and, the property was likely to make more money. And they all said it consistently, but it was close. Yeah. And so once I heard that, I was pretty confident. I said, you know what? I think at the worst case, we would break even with this place for a while. But I think that we can make something of it and it's definitely going to appreciate. We found out that there was a resort opening up in Broken Bow, which actually just opened up at the end of last month. And once I found that out, I thought this is a market that's growing. I mean, it's like a $200-300 million resort from the Choctaw Indian tribe. And when I realized that, I thought this market's growing. We're going to get some equity out of it, regardless if the cash flow is somewhat tight. So I figured, let's take the leap. Let's do it. And my wife she's got such a brilliant eye for design. So once we negotiated the sale of that property and got it under contract, that part was pretty easy for me just because, it's what I do for a living. So that wasn't hard. We did select a real estate agent, I will say, and this is kind of like a piece of advice to people potentially. We selected a real estate agent that actually represented the seller as well. And that's not something I would always recommend to people. I think you have to go into that knowing that it's very difficult to represent two parties' interests that are generally conflicting in a full and robust way. But I thought at that time the property was popular. There were multiple offers. She's representing us and him. She's going to get more money out of it, so she's going to work harder for us. That was my thinking. And we really didn't need an agent because we have that background. So so that worked out well for us. I do think we paid a little too much for it, which I'll get to more in a second. But once we got it closed and had an inspection done and everything was good, the question, of course, was how to set it up and how to make it look good. And that's back to what I mentioned earlier. My wife has just got such a fantastic eye for design, and she just knows how to make something romantic and attractive to people. And we obviously use all the tools that Vodyssey makes available as well. Watched Mike Whitfield's courses on that and tried to soak up all the knowledge we could. And we ended up just, trying to make this a romantic honeymoon cabin as best we could. And I think we did a fantastic job with it. I really do. I mean, it ended up making $75,000 in the first year, which was a little more than what we had thought. So it did really well for us. We were able to leverage the tax benefits of that as well, that we also learned from Vodyssey through Mike Pine's lectures, and materially participate there. And that obviously was a windfall to us as well because it offset my W-2 income. So that was fantastic. And I mean, it just ended up being a great experience. I mean, I think you've seen pictures of the property. I think we did a really good job setting it up.
Yeah, and you guys listening or whether you're watching or listening, whatever platform you're on, we always post links to these properties because we always say success leaves clues, and I totally agree. You guys you'll love the way that and the property came together so beautifully, really congruent design and fairly unique in that area to get the views that you guys have. I mean, it's a lot of the properties I see in that particular area they're in the woods, right? You've got a lot of the pine trees around and everything, but you don't really have a lot of those views. In fact, the first time I saw the photo of just the outside and the views, I didn't realize that it was actually in the Broken Bow area. I was thinking it was going to be closer, in where we typically see like the Smokies or somewhere else that, you've got a little bit more of the view type cabins.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so I think that, there's a lot of things that lined up. So you said that the launch went well. First year revenue was about $75K. How close was that to your underwriting originally? You said it's a little bit more, but like, how close were you?
It was very close. Our underwriting was about 70, and that was conservative. That's because the advice was to be conservative, which I think is great advice. And 75 is almost exactly, in fact, it is exactly what our property manager said at the low range the property would earn. So it ended up making me very confident that we can underwrite appropriately in the market. Provided, again, I think there are a lot of people that are suffering up there. We've made a lot of relationships there in the last year, and there's a lot of people that are suffering. The market has definitely slowed down, so you really do have to do a lot to stand out. And I think you made a point about it there, which is that a lot of cabins look identical up there. They're all beautiful, but a lot of them are just, you see the picture and it's just, hey, this is a really pretty cabin with some trees around it. And even though that they're gorgeous and they're luxurious in different areas that might allow you to stand out, in Broken Bow it's tough. You do need something, I think, that's an X factor. The view was it for that. So, and we actually did that with the second property we bought there, which we just launched earlier this year. That property also has really wonderful views, and we were actually able to negotiate a much better deal on it too.
So you've already gotten property number 2, and we've already just launched it going into like our peak season. So you haven't gone through the peak season yet on that one, right? So
No.
Tell us a little bit about that one and what's different about that one.
That one is doing better than the first one. It's actually a better property just all around. So my philosophy after we bought the first one was every successive purchase and acquisition we need to do something better than we did before. So that we're always improving. Now I know there's diminishing returns there, and that may not be always possible, but that's my goal. And so on the second one, we found a property that was under construction that somebody walked away from. And it's got even better views. It's in a much more private location than our first one. And we put it under contract actually at roughly the same price, like a little bit more. So again, top of the market at the time. And I'm going to go into a little background here, so I apologize if I talk too much. Feel free to stop me. But
no, you're good. That's why we have these conversations. There's never too many details.
Great. Yeah, we put it under contract. It was under construction because somebody walked away from it. So, and the builder, I think the market had turned a little bit. The builder was, now in a position where it wasn't selling like hotcakes, and it was a little bit slower. So even we did negotiate a topper of the market price. I think that was kind of like, it was a take it or leave it type thing, and we didn't see much room to negotiate. But as the construction continued, it was about 8 months to get it done. And the market definitely changed even more during that time. So by the end of the construction of that property, there was tons of stuff on the market, and rates were still high. People were starting to back off just because there was a flood of inventory. And we had a real tough experience with it, where we had a building inspector go out there and inspect the property for us, who was a fantastic guy. And he really went above and beyond for us. I absolutely love him. He's a good friend now. And he basically told us that the deck, which was the feature of this property, with the views and everything, was built so poorly that it actually was in a state of collapse.
Oh, wow. On a brand new property.
On a brand new property, and that we had paid, that we were under contract top of the market. So we actually just kind of talked a lot about it, my wife and I. Again, we were in the middle of being parents and, getting ready to have our second, or try to have our second at that time. And we did not want to deal with an absolute fiasco on this. So we had said, hey, we're going to walk away from it. And we did that kind of hoping that we might, get them to come back and say, hey, we're willing to negotiate. And that's exactly what happened. And so what we were able to do on this that I'm really, really happy about, and this is kind of a segue into something else I was hoping to tell everyone as a piece of advice, I think, is we were able to negotiate a seller finance deal on that. at a
Nice.
4% interest rate. And we were able to get a significant price reduction and then have the repairs done on it. So at the end of the day, when we launched it at the start of March, we had a brand new property with a lot of maintenance that would have been done over the course of 20 years taken care of. We had better materials and all kinds of stuff, very solidly built, and all of that expense, of course, being a tax deduction. So I felt pretty good about that. And a significantly cheaper property that costs way less every month, but is probably going to end up making more money. And so far is doing better. So super happy about that. And I just wanted to say to everybody, the seller financing is an incredibly powerful tool. And I think it's not utilized enough because I think there's some downsides to it. I think people get sellers, particularly when they have real estate agents involved, you mention it to them and they immediately kind of get apprehensive and think you're trying to rip them off. And it's very difficult to pierce the veil on that and get people to take it seriously. But it is an incredibly powerful tool and actually can work in both parties' favor when it's done appropriately. So I really recommend looking at that.
I could not agree more. And I'm so glad you brought it up because one, it puts you in such a better position. You got a 4% interest rate on seller financing, where rates right now for investment properties are in the 8% range, right? I mean, It's that's significant when it comes to your cash flow and the cash flow ability on this property. But also, like it is such an underutilized tool and knowledge that people are not, I don't believe enough real estate. I feel like everybody that's purchasing property should invest in that knowledge, right? And understand it. It is what I did for the first 10 years of my investment career. I was doing seller financing nonstop. And then I got to the point where it wasn't as easy to negotiate. Like the last 3 or 4 years, it was tough to do seller financing deals. Okay. They were out there, but when you're getting 50 offers on a property, be honest, you're probably not talking about seller finance deals. The way that the market has changed a little bit and the way that when you're in these deals and the sellers are in those situations, it was a really good deal for the seller as well as for you guys, right? And yes. That's the best type of deals is when it's really good for both of you. And seller finance deals, a lot of times, the sellers aren't as versed on it. They're not as knowledgeable on it. And a lot of the other buyers making offers aren't as knowledgeable on it. And so if you can bring that know-how to the table, it's a breath of fresh air for the seller. And a lot of times we think it's not. They're like, this is a solution to their problem. Right. And so I couldn't agree more. In fact, I've got Pace Morby coming up on one of my upcoming podcasts, who I believe is a really good expert when it comes to subject to and seller financing. And so we're going to have a long conversation about that in a couple of weeks here that's scheduled to talk about that because I couldn't agree with you more. What a great resource. And it's so awesome to hear that you brought that up and a way to utilize that. Now, with your background, I get that it makes sense because you're comfortable putting these deals together and understanding them, right? But it's not that difficult either, right? Once you really understand it, it's not the most technical and complicated thing to put together.
No, it really isn't. And Pace, I'm glad you mentioned Pace. Pace Morby is just, he's awesome. I mean, what he's doing, he's prolific, and he absolutely is a great person to learn from this. But I will say about, everything that I see about seller financing and that I've been exposed to, it tends to revolve around how buyers can snag a really good deal from sellers. And right. you made a really good point earlier when you said that sellers are not as well versed in it and sometimes don't really understand it as well. And you end up in a position as a buyer where you have to educate them on it for them to see the benefits. So I think what the market kind of needs a third party that can help people do seller finance transactions without being in one pocket or the other. And it's actually my colleague and I are getting ready to launch a business doing exactly that, which is something interesting. If anybody's interested in consulting on that, you can reach out to us. I mean, we'll help you do that because really, seller financing can be a powerful tool for sellers as well as buyers, and can enrich sellers and just as much as it can enrich buyers. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking into.
I can't wait to hear what you guys are putting together because I couldn't it's so important and I think that a lot of times that's what holds people back is not having that that third party that can help them do the deal, right? I do think that there's a big, like, well, what if I do this wrong? What if I kind of understand it, but I need some help. And so it's awesome. I think it's a need that you guys are going to solve, a problem that you're going to solve. And I can't wait to hear more about what you guys are doing. And we'll definitely help promote that. And anybody that's listening, obviously, you know how to find the information on these episodes, even in the future, and we'll hook you guys up. Cause I think seller financing is a powerful, powerful thing right now.
It really is when you have a transaction where a bank is involved, the bank, what people forget and don't really think about, the bank is another party that needs to get value. And when you have three parties that need to get value as opposed to two, the other two parties, the buyer and the seller, aren't going to get as much value as they could otherwise get. So once that party is cut out of it, that remaining value can be shared between the seller and the buyer in really incredible ways. And I know I'm not trying to bash lenders. They have absolutely a lot of value,
Sure.
and seller financing isn't for everybody, but I don't want to belabor it, but yeah, absolutely. To everybody out there in this market right now, with rates being really high, with there being a lot of inventory, I just encourage everyone to find the opportunities that you can, make the most attractive and to make the most financial sense for yourself. And that may require, asking people if they're willing to do that, but just don't hesitate to ask the question. And if you run into the situation where they're deterred by the fact that you're proposing it and, you need that third party involved, I can help you with that. Other people can help you with that. Just, take advantage of it.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. And I think that another thing that what kind of led to probably some of the conversations about the seller financing, but a really important lesson as well in the very beginning of that, you said, we had some issues with this property and we were willing to walk away. Right. And I think you truly have to be willing to walk if the deal doesn't work for you. Right. And I think that that's what led to you guys really ultimately getting a really good deal,
Yes.
with the repairs, with the seller financing, everything else is because you were willing to walk if things didn't work out the way you needed them to.
Absolutely. And it was hard for us to make that decision. I mean, it was agonizing. We spent 8 months of our life just kind of invested in this. We were dreaming about the property. Again, I mentioned my wife and I are romantic people. We loved the idea. We were putting together ideas for how the property would look and how we would market it. And when we found out that it was built like that, it was like, really, we took it personally. It was hard, but I mean, you don't want to get into something that's nothing but a bunch of problems for you. That's not the point of spending your money and your family's money. So
right.
you have to have that sense of being willing to walk away when the deal's not right. And it's amazing what happens when you do. I mean, sometimes the other party will come back and say, let's make it right. So
right. Listen, let's figure this out together so it's good for both of us, right? And that's what happened, right? And like I always hear people that are, they're halfway into the deal or 11th hour of a deal and they're like, man, I'm pot committed. I've got to go through with it. I'm like, you're never pot committed, especially before you buy the property. Like you can pause and you can walk away, and sometimes that leads to that deal actually becoming better for everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep. And that's just a real quick point too on that is making sure, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, just making sure as an investor, when you go under contract for a property, that you're careful to know that if it isn't built right, if something is wrong with it, if it's not what you are anticipating, that you can walk away from that and get your earnest money back or whatever. Just don't put yourself in the situation where you're hung out to dry if somebody delivers a very shoddy product to you.
Yeah. And especially on new construction, right? Because you're diving into these deals like it's different than existing where you have X amount of time to do inspections and look at everything. On a new construction home, you don't have a chance until usually right before closing to really see the final product. And so a really good point. And to say, hey, listen, there's got to be some contingencies in there on a new build product that you can get out at a certain point if it's not delivered to a certain standard.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome, David. I love these conversations. There's so many lessons in this one. Right. And one, like, I just want to back up again. I just listen, you guys listening to these episodes, sometimes you got to rewind them and listen to them again. And this is one of those, I feel like, because when David was talking about, he's in a market that a lot of people are struggling and things have gone down, yet he's got 2 properties that are doing better than he projected, right? There's a reason for that, right? All those things that they said that they did, and the key things is they're delivering an amazing experience, right? They put this property together not only with the views, but when you go look at this property, it doesn't just look like every other property out there in a listing that's showing these amazing cabins. There's amazing cabins, there's amazing, beautiful properties all through the Broken Bow area, but they're not all making money, right? And they're not all making money because they're not delivering a great experience. And they've put together this, not only a great property with, good proximity to things, good views, those things are all important. But really, I think what stands out when you look at this listing and you go to the show notes and check it out is they're showing the experience. They're showing the lifestyle and of what you would do enjoying this area. And that's such an important piece of being able to stand out and being able to operate better than the competition in your marketplace. And so, I always say success leaves clues. That's why we have these conversations, and there's a lot to unpack in this one. And so, and a lot of lessons here all the way, we've covered a lot of different topics here, David. And so, I love having these types of conversations. And so as we kind of wrap up, we just got done with that launch. I'm really excited for you guys to go through the peak season on this new property and see how it performs and what it's doing. And obviously awesome to know what you did on the financing side of it. And, it'll be fun to have your daughter on board, toward the end of the year and start
definitely
experiencing these properties with her as well. And so,
yeah.
We've shared a lot of hey, lessons learned, right? Are there any others that come to mind? At the end of every episode, I always ask people, if you go back and give your younger self, even though you're super young right now, if you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be? Is there anything that comes to mind on that front?
Yeah, I guess I started this off by saying that it took it took the universe kicking me in the teeth to get me off the bench and get me doing things and not being afraid to do it. And I think, one of the slogans I hear all the time that I really like a lot, my partner says it to me a lot, is now, not how. And I love that. So that's a definite big piece of advice is just go do it. Just go do something with it. Even you say a lot, Sean, I've heard you say it before, that you don't have to hit a home run on everything. Hit a base hit. That's totally fine. Base hits in this sector in vacation rentals, if you own that property for 10 to 20 years, that base hit is going to be a home run. It's Absolutely. Very, very unlikely that it won't be, just because of what happens with real estate and how great it is to be in real estate. So definitely that's a piece of advice that I have, and that's probably a good way to wrap it up.
I love it. And I think it's a great reminder that don't wait for some major event. Like you said, it took kind of life kicking you in the teeth a little bit to start moving, but not everybody has those events. And unfortunately, like when I said in the beginning, is a lot of times that is what gets us started, right? It's easy to get started when your back's against the wall or some major event happens and you look in the mirror and say, man, I gotta do a couple things different, right? Like when I lost everything and we came back and things were going really, really well, people are like, man, that's so amazing. I said, well, I lost everything. I have nowhere to go but up, right? That's easy, right? What's really hard is like what you're saying is now, not how. Do something when you don't have to, right? Do something when you're comfortable. I always say the biggest mistake so many people make is we get comfortable sitting on the sidelines until something major happens, right? Do it. Like if you have these goals and you have these aspirations, go start making progress every single day. That's why I always end every show the same way that I do, is pick that one thing you can do today, start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. The reason for that is because we're saying, listen, when life is comfortable, that's the hardest time to make a move, right? Yeah. And so just pick something that you can do to start moving forward. And so love the advice, and good advice from such a young person. I always wish I knew that stuff back when I was in my 20s and 30s, right? And so it's awesome, David. So man, I really appreciate these conversations. I know people that listen to our podcast really appreciate them as well. And so thanks so much for joining me. These are really fun conversations for me. I learned so much from them. I get caught up on all these different journeys, and there's always so many lessons as long as we've been in the game, and reminders of different things that we need to pay attention to. So thanks so much for sharing and being a part of this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and thank you for Vodyssey and for what you guys do. It's wonderful. It's a great community, and it really does make people's lives better. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. I don't, I'm always so grateful that you guys allow me to be part of the journey. And so, I'm just grateful to be, have some experience to share a little bit, I guess. Right. And then be a part of this journey with you guys. So
Definitely.
those of you joining us, we know how valuable your time is, and we do appreciate you spending it with us. I always ask a couple things at the end of every episode. Our goal is to help people walk into the short-term rental game with their eyes wide open. And so if you know somebody else that would love to be a part of these conversations or hear these conversations, share the show. Those things help us spread the word and help other people, hear what's going on in the short-term rental game. We don't have sponsors. We don't get told what to do on these episodes. We just have these conversations because we love them and we want you to walk into the game with your eyes wide open. If you have more than 30 seconds, I always ask you to like or share or give us a thumbs up on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final and most important thing, and you heard me say it a minute ago, is to pick that one thing you can do today, start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website?
Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.